monsters drinks this morning.
Figure I'll just start it here, man, because we're already going. So fuck it
Yeah, why
all.
not?
So, yeah, welcome to the fucking Thinking Man's Pro Wrestling Podcast. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Rusty fucking Diamond. You can see up here. It says something different down there, but I had to get a new thing because I had to pay for some shit. So I haven't switched it up yet with my new account. So and I'm here with you
Gee, yeah,
know.
that's me. Yeah, and I'm as tired as can be, as always. So it's been nonstop weekend. We took more crazy orders in for the weekend for the shop, and we're now making. I think we're making little tiny. Oh yeah, they're right here. Little tiny trains for Chelsea Green's figure. So we'll be doing that. Matty Cardona, he's in surgery, I think, as we speak right now. So I will hear about that in a little bit. Hopefully, he's good to go, and I'll share that either at the end of the show or next week, and give the update on how he's doing with his bicep. So, but we got a guest.
Yeah,
Hola.
speaking of biceps,
I don't have any. The most non-body guy in professional wrestling. I tell people, I'm good thing I never became a body guy because it's certainly not going to happen now at my age. So, how
Yeah,
you
man.
guys doing?
We're good, hanging in there. We're super stoked, super excited. We haven't done this before. We haven't had an actual guest on the show, and we are very honored to have you here. This is the devil himself, Derek Drexel. He's been in pro wrestling, man. Since I was watching Portland wrestling. I mean, I think you were managing at the time, Jason Sullivan.
I'm at 17 years now. So which just
Fuck.
blows my mind because 17 years, and I started the first bump I took in the ring was at age 29 when I was a morning radio DJ here in Portland, and it went from there where I contacted Frank Culbertson in Portland Wrestling, got my foot in the door as an announcer and just doing interviews and stuff. And essentially, I told the radio station, "Hey, our competition's on the same TV station, so if I get on there, I can have the morning show all over there. I get to compete with our competition." They're like, "All right, cool," because I worked for a top 40 radio station. There was no way in hell they were going to back pro wrestling, but I managed to find that hit up Culbertson, and of course, pro wrestling wants any kind of publicity they can get, especially from a major morning radio show. So we did the crossover, and I came in, and Grappler started training me, which was very much the old school style of training. Now, like when I see kids at schools now, and they of course want to learn all the moves and stuff. My first 2 months of wrestling was just all I learned how to do was bump, run the ropes, take hip tosses, take arm drags, and I never actually learned how to do anything offensive. That was not Grappler's intentions. Grappler's intentions were to make sure that if I was in the ring and a situation happened between me and a wrestler, that I would have the muscle memory to protect myself with whatever happened. And
Makes
I'm
sense.
happy he did that because 2 months of training with Grappler twice a week, where I kind of felt like he purposely would have the guys try to chop my chest as much as possible, run the ropes as much as possible, just mark me up as much as possible. So I would go back on the radio and talk about how real pro wrestling was. But yeah, that was my first 2 months. And then I started in as an announcer and got dropped in my head by one of the douchebag 20-yard or 20-mile vets that worked for Portland Wrestling at the time. My very first appearance, he gave me a double underhook DDT and purposely planted me right on my head and jacked up my neck. And then as they did the stretcher job out and I'm carried to the back, walks up to me, slaps me on the cheek and goes, "How's your neck, kid?" And I kind of no-sold it, got up and went, "Oh, a little stiff, but okay, thank you very much." And I shook his hand and I walked away because I knew that in that locker room right off the bat that you show weakness, you're never going to make it.
Yeah.
My first year in wrestling was a hell of a lot of beatings I took because I was the radio DJ that didn't deserve to be there. And if it wasn't for a few people like Dr. Luther, when Luther took over the book and became the writer for Portland Wrestling, that's when I switched from being an announcer into a manager. And Luther took me under his wing, and Playboy Buddy Rose took me under his wing. And there's a few different guys, Skag Rollins and they're the reasons that I lasted that first year. Because if it wasn't for them,
Gave me
I would say
goosebumps,
about
man.
75%
names.
of the Portland wrestling scene did not want me here. They didn't give a shit if I was on the radio and I could get them free publicity. They looked at me as someone taking their spot. And the ironic thing about it is most of these guys never traveled more than like they had a showdown in NorCal at one time. You know, they went all the way down to California for like 2 months in a row and got bookings, and that was the farthest they've ever been. And when I look at what their careers are compared to what I've done, the guy that was never supposed to make it, and I've wrestled in 4 countries and a shit ton of states, still adding states, and I've wrestled, you know, I've been an extra for WWE. So I mean, I've done shit that I never had should have. I mean, I've wrestled guys that I think the first time I wrestled Super Crazy or like Tommy Dreamer, I'm just like, how is this a reality? Like I used to just like mark out and just be in the crowd. And the most I ever thought I could accomplish in wrestling would be a manager. When I first got in, like that was my goal, was if I could be a manager like Bobby the Brain Heenan and just a manager in general, even though managers weren't really a thing at that point. I thought that I had accomplished something, but 17 years later, I'm still doing it, and I still keep getting these amazing matches and opportunities that I sometimes feel bad for, but I just make the most of them. So I'll gonna keep doing it until the wheels fall off. I've now got to set a new goal of 20 years in the business, and I will be 50 years old at that point. So,
No shit.
yeah,
That's crazy, man. No, and there's you look at the business, there's a lot of wrestlers that get into it back in the day at a later age, and they don't last as long. And
yeah, the body, it doesn't, the body doesn't like put up like the injuries and stuff like that. The worst injury I've gotten was 7-8 years ago, and it was coming out of being down in Paraguay and doing Luchando down there. Ended up getting
I'm reading about how you're down there on your bio here.
Yeah, I was down there and I got a bad stinger taking a guy came up short on a dive. I shot in to protect him, and his boot came straight down on top of my head. Ended up herniating 2 discs in my neck. And so I lay there. Like we're doing a TV taping, and I'm laying there for a good 30-45 seconds. I have no feeling on my left side, and all that's going through my head is, you are now paralyzed in South America. What are you going to do next with your life? And feeling came back. Luckily, like the company took care of me down there, and it was right near the end of the tour. But because of healthcare and stuff down there, I was able to get all my MRIs, all my X-rays, all that stuff down there. Then when I came back to America, first doctor I went and saw was like, we're going to do double fusion surgery. And I told him, yeah, you're going to go fuck yourself. And I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm letting you just like carve up my neck so bad to end my career instantaneously. I'm going to try physical. Yeah, I no way in hell. And so I went and did physical therapy, found another specialist who actually had way more experience. And within about a month and a half, 2 months of physical therapy, I gotten rid of all numbness in my fingers, and it just kept improving. And the specialist I went and saw, no, there was enough exercises. I still do them now. Like I'll get a little bit of numbness in my left fingers every so often. But there's certain exercises I do every morning when I wake up, or if my neck's bad, and it just loosens it up, and it just takes the pressure off.
I got my neck
nerves.
fusion in August, and I still have numbing in my left coming back because they wanted to do a double, and so they did a single.
Yeah,
and that was enough for me. And now I still have numbness. I'm like, oh, they should have done a double. Now they want to go back in October and do it, but I'd rather try to some physical therapy or something natural.
I honestly know no one who went through surgery and ends up better off on the other end when it comes to messing with your spine. Unfortunately, unless it is so bad where it's like completely crushed vertebrae and stuff. But the average herniation where it's just pressing against your nerves and giving numbness and stuff like that, you've got a much better chance with just a bunch of physical therapy, changing up your diet, things like that, and just a lot of yoga type stuff. And like the rest of my body is now falling apart. I need new ACLs in my knees and stuff like that. But my neck kind of doesn't give me as much problems. But going through that, I also changed my style. Because of that neck injury, I had to make sure that I wasn't going to land on the top of my head as much as I did in the first half of my career. And because of that, it just made me a better worker. And it's kind of turned into what Drexl is now, which somehow is a massive baby face in the Pacific Northwest. No matter what I do, the fans love me, and I've become just some weird creature. I've become the people's monster in this area. So no matter what horrific things I do, they chant Drexel's gonna kill you at my opponents. I was sitting across against Hammerstone. You know who Hammerstone is, who's
Yes.
a very large man. And he gets in the ring, and the whole entire crowd in Spokane, which is a couple, about 250 people out there, are chanting, Drexel's going to kill you. And I'm laying in the corner, literally giggling like a little girl going, my God, you people are crazier than Drexl, because this man in the real world would just crush me. But these people believe that Drexl is that crazy. And I mean, I guess after all these years and the craziness and the bumps that I've taken, they just assume that, like I say, I can't die, or what I say is I've already been dead inside for years, so you can't kill what's already dead inside. So, and I don't know where this question started. I ramble a lot. I'm sorry, guys.
And
Oh
so
no,
do
you're
we.
good.
So
One thing is do you think? I mean, you are a good person for just the evolution of your character.
Oh yeah.
Do you think that's one of the main things in wrestling to keep surviving? I mean, I know
Always.
staying fit and showing up to all the shows and constantly working is one thing, but yeah, the evolution of characters is what I've seen longevity in. I think a lot with watching wrestling.
What I tell people is, just like you in real life, your real personality is ever changing. It's always improving. And I look at characters and gimmicks in wrestling the exact same way. When I tell people and people are trying to find their way as far as finding their character or their gimmick and stuff, I tell them to stop looking at wrestling, start looking at movies, TV, take all these different little things, I'll break down Drexl character, for instance. Drexl character is a mix of a bunch of different horror characters. You got Chop Top and the Hitchhiker, both from the Texas Chainsaw Massacres. You got Otis and a little bit of Captain Spaulding from House of Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects. You got some Buffalo Bill in there, but then you actually have real serial killers and the way the twitches that they have, or schizophrenics. I took a lot of watching videos of schizophrenics and watching how they don't make the eye contact and like the changing of personalities and things like that. And I take all those, I tell people that it's not the average person, when they create their wrestling character, they want to be the biggest, the buffest, the best at this, the best at that. And the wrestling crowd doesn't know what it's like to be the best at anything. I mean, honestly, unless you're Kurt Angle, unless you are honestly the best athlete, one of the best athletes in the world, no one's going to believe your bullshit. So why not embrace your flaws? Because when you embrace your flaws, that's something that a wrestling fan actually can relate to, can sink their teeth into. And so that's what I tell everyone. I'm like, embrace your flaws, embrace the weirdness. And that's what's going to make a crowd actually believe in you and feel connected to you. Because back in the day, they felt connected to a Ricky or Robert Gibson with the Rock and Roll Express and shit like that. And there was an emotional connection, and that is so lost nowadays. And you don't see it that much. But I do notice that the true emotional connection with wrestlers, usually you've got a few that get hatred, like MJF, but most of them are the weirdos. And most of them are like prime example, Kid Bandit. They're only a year in this business, but the emotional connection they have with their fan base, because they are so just them in their weird anime awkwardness. And when they first started, they had trained down in SoCal, and then they went and trained out at the Nightmare Academy and came back. And I actually wrestled them about 2 months after Nightmare Academy. And so Luther, one of my trainers, had already put in a good word about Kid. And so when I wrestled them, they were having problems at that point of getting out there, because the SoCal was like, no, we don't want anything weird and different. And that's too animated. It's too cartoon. It's too this. And I'm like, no, that's unique. And I'm like, and that's what's going to make you stand out. And plus, they have this like an amazing ability at they study kung fu and different styles of of martial arts were lots of cool spinning kicks and just their own unique style. And I told them to keep embracing that. And as they've gone over these last 10 months to a year now and gotten all these opportunities, everyone's told them the same. And now they're just exploding. And they're same time they're dealing with their own, trying to figure out who they are themselves with their transition and stuff like that. But the emotional connection is so there because it is that awkwardness. It is like the average wrestling fan isn't some buff jock that's going to end up playing NFL football and doesn't understand like the WWE model of a pro wrestler is not someone that people can really relate to anymore, unfortunately. So especially on the independents, embrace your quirks, embrace what makes you different. And that's usually what's going to get people behind you. And it's kind of worked with Drexl. My character has become so in depth and people believe in the craziness of Drexl so much that they don't hate me no matter what I do. They just like, oh, it's Drexl. He's crazy. I mean, I can go out there and attack a baby face. And the next month they're going to still they're cheer me. Like I can just switch on a dime, no problem. And usually after I attack the baby face, I'm still going to have half the crowd still cheering me like, hey, it's Drexl. You shouldn't have gotten in the ring with him. And it's just the weirdest thing. And something happened to people during COVID too, because pre-COVID, it was about half and half. Like I had the respect of the fans that had seen me for so many years, but after COVID, like kids aren't even scared of me anymore. Like kids want to play with my bone weapons. Most kids, some I see a little bit of fear, but once they see that one kid that comes up and acts weird with me, and then they all just embrace it and love it. And it was last month I was at a show and I had my staple gun. And so earlier on, while I was selling merchandise, I had the classic fan come up and he's in a wheelchair and he goes, so he's talking to me and Jaden the Unbelievable. And he's like, yeah, I've been watching wrestling all these years, blah, 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 asking question. Then the almighty question of, so is wrestling fake? And as Jaden starts giving a nice political answer of like, well, you know, we're not trying to hurt each other, but it's very physical what we do, blah, blah, blah. I just pick up my staple gun and I just shoot myself in the arm with the staple gun, to which that now makes a big click. He stops, looks, and then I just pull the staple out. My arm starts bleeding and I'm just staring at him like, well, that hurt. And he just stops and he rolls away. And I see some kids see this and their minds are just blowing. So as I come out later on from the match and I'm walking around, these kids are going nuts. They're all jumping up in the front row. And they look at them. Want a souvenir? Bam, staple myself. I think I got myself in the chest. Yank it out and hand it to one of the kids. And that kid's mind is just like, oh my God, as they're running around with a now slightly bloody staple that has just been pulled out of my chest. And these kids embrace the weird horror craziness. I don't know what they watched during COVID, but Drexl is no longer scary to them. Maybe because the real world is way worse than me. Maybe walking around and dealing with crazy junkies and possibility of stepping on needles when you walk through a park now is scarier than the monster that might live under your bed. So I don't know. It's a weird world we live in, but as far as me, I'm going to take full advantage. My merch sales have never been higher. I'm literally having to order new merch every 2 weeks. So I'm doing really well in wrestling right now for being some old man who can't do any flips and for the most part loves to just paper cut people out there and just have fun and play mind games with smoke and mirrors.
I mean, you're giving them much more personal connection than someone that's out doing a lot of flips and shit. And like the average wrestling fan can't do a flip. There's a lot of things like with physicality and shit. Like if you punch someone in the face, like they know a lot of wrestling fans know what it's like to get punched in the face, but do a fucking 600-degree flip off the top rope, like they don't know what the fuck that is. They don't know what it's gonna feel like when it hits someone. But
and that's something else that I tell people, because I get asked, like with the super gimmicky wrestling, that's like the ridiculousness of pro wrestling. They're like, well, how can this person be taken seriously? Like in Orange Cassidy, for example, he does this stupid little kicks and his hands are in his pockets. Well, that's because at that instant, Orange Cassidy can turn it on and it is amazing, like such a skillful, high flying, like the way he moves around the ring and stuff. For Drexl, I can work an entire shine where I'm giving titty twisters the entire time. And that's all I'm doing. But when it comes to actual meat and potatoes, when I start throwing punches and forearms and stuff, it looks like I'm taking the guy's head off. And as long as your strikes and what you do looks realistic, wrestling fans are going to accept the funness of wrestling and the quirkiness of wrestling. I wrestled Sunday
and paper cuts. People know what titty twisters and paper cuts feel like.
Exactly. So on Sunday, I wrestled the show. And the match before mine was very PWG, super indie, and sellout for the wrestlers. Wrestlers loved it, but the fans in this particular crowd didn't quite get it. So my tag match goes out there, and my entire shine essentially was me. I ended up pretty much blowing myself up with my shine of not doing anything, where whatever happened, I just bit whatever body part. So it started with me fucking taking an arm, biting fingers. Next guy comes in, taking an arm, biting fingers. All right, well, now they're going to use their weight against me. Take me back to the corner. I'll bite this guy's nose and come out. Next guy, I bite his ear. Finally, they want nothing to do with me. Tag my partner in. My partner comes in, does a little bit of wrestling, takes the hand, and I'm like, what did I tell you? Starts biting the hand. Crowd is going absolutely apeshit. That was our entire shine. I forget. Oh, and then I ended up paper cutting one of the guy's toes. But essentially, instead of actually doing any wrestling. And so a lot of those same wrestlers that were watching the match before are now watching our match, but instead of like in ooh and ah, they're like, these motherfuckers aren't going to bump a single goddamn time. And this crowd is just like nonstop, like loud for this. And as I tell students, it's something that you won't get for years. And it takes a certain amount of confidence and ability to fall into your character once you're in the ring and wrestling. But it's not about the moves of the wrestling, it's what's in between. That's honestly everything that really happens in pro wrestling has nothing to do with the moves. The moves are just little bits of the storytelling, and it's in between those moves that all the real story gets told and what really sucks people in. And so I just talked about that match with Akira. And I've gotten a lot of great compliments on it. Akira was happy with it. Me personally, I watched it. I'm not quite happy with it because when I watch it, I can see in my own head, I'm thinking a little too much about all the glass spots and all the technical spots that we had planned out for this match, because in the back, it was very much, I try to be able to work with anyone. If guy likes to call a bunch of stuff, I let the guy, like, we'll call a bunch of stuff. If it's up to me personally, I'll call a few select points, and what I say is, connect the dots, and that way it gives us gives me my opportunity to be Drexl. It gives me the opportunity to feed off of what they're responding to. If I've got all the shit planned out and I get out there and they keep popping because I keep biting the guy, different parts of the guy's body, then why aren't I going to keep biting? And I'll take it to the extreme. The guy's not wearing shoes. I'll bite his finger. I'll bite his nose. I'll bite his ear. And at that point, then I'll take him off his feet. I'll bite his toe. Why? Because I know wrestling's about moments, about memory. No one remembers an entire match, but I'm going to make sure that at the end of that show, they at least remember one or two Drexl moments of something weird, something different, something they've never seen, something that gave them a actual real response. And it could be biting someone's toe and they're like, oh God, that's so gross. And I'm like, yeah, so gross, but you remember it.
You want them leaving the arena going, man, that was a good show, but that fucking guy fucking biting that guy's toe was fucking crazy, man.
Yeah, or he paper cutted his toe. Yeah, I did the toe cutting to Jacob Fatu a few years ago at Defy. And every time I see Jacob's family in the Seattle area, they're like, man, when you paper cut at Usa's toes, damn. And I get it every single time from them. And this is years later, just because it's something they hadn't seen done. And so that's what I try to all the time in my matches, just give something that's different, something that hasn't been done, something like weird, interesting, whatever. I'm going to make sure that they know that I was in a fight, but at the same time, I'm going to give them something that, they didn't expect it was going to happen in that fight. With me and Akira, we started off the match with Akira's amazing technical wrestler. I can technical wrestle, but I choose not to most of the time. So as he was out wrestling me, I proceeded to get my staple gun and started stapling his hand, because that's my version of chaining. And so as we're kind of still grappling, he gets the staple gun away from me, and we got our hands, and he puts the staple gun to my head, and I smile. I was like, "Yeah, get me." And he's looking at me. I'm like, "Come on, shoot me." It's like, so then he looks at our hands and he proceeds to staple our hands together. And so then we're both trying to pull apart. We're both trying to whip each other, but our hands are stuck together. Can you really stick your hands together? Yes, if we were using staples that long, but I ain't that stupid. Like, there's a little bit of like, all right, yeah, I got to believe that these guys' hands are actually stapled together. But it was a fun, different spot and something you don't see to start off a Japanese style death match. Why? Because I just want to do something a little bit different. So, I mean, yeah, wrestling, I tell everyone, just, embrace the weird, embrace the difference, embrace what makes you odd, and you're probably going to attract more fans with that than you will by talking about how you're so great at all these things, because most people, especially nowadays, don't know what it feels like to be on the upper 1% in the world. So
It's
Yeah. Yeah, if you got a question, Rusty, go for it, man. I got a million questions. We can go back and forth here.
start rocking them, dude.
So one question I do got, because I heard it through the biz and all that stuff. You went down to FCW, right? Or Florida?
yeah, I went
And
down
then-
there to do the beginner school that they had. I was already 5-6 years in the business at that point, but I wanted to be seen by the WWE. At that time, there was two options to do that. You could pay the $1,000 to go do their 3-day camp. That was pretty much the best of the best athletes in the world are who went and did those $1,000 camps. So I would have been competing against guys like Adam Thornstowe or a Timothy Thatcher, or like just phenomenal athletes. Or I could move my ass down to Tampa and go do the 3-month beginners program and be seen twice a week down at their school. And that's what I chose, because I knew there was no way with my body and my size. This is still at a time when WWE was the land of giants. They didn't want anyone under 6 foot. I'm 5'11", but when I got down there, Norman Smiley told me, "You're 6 foot from now on. Just anyone asks, you're 6 foot." I'm like, "Yes, sir." But I went down there because I was hoping that maybe my gift for gab would get me noticed for being a manager. It wasn't anything they were looking for, so it never happened. But I got my foot in the. I got to spend 3.5 months with Norman Smiley. I got to kind of be the student teacher, the next class for a couple of the classes, just teaching how to do bumps because Norman's back was kind of bad. But I got extra time with Norman, and it was awesome. It was an amazing experience. And Norman really kind of refined. He helped me with the basics that I never received by just learning how to protect myself and then learning on the job training that I had done before. He helped refine a lot of that stuff. And because of that, that's where I got to be an extra at FCW. I got to work with Dusty Rhodes once, which was, amazing. Shit. We were supposed to be a bunch of paparazzi for this group coming in. And so Dusty's like, so I need you. Have you seen the TMZ? You see all the paparazzi and they're pushing, they're shoving, they're trying to get their shots. Now I need that realisticness. But remember, this isn't about you, baby. This is about them. So don't get too pushy. Just enough movement so it looks real. But like, this ain't about you. You got to remember that. And like Dusty just giving a whole speech about how to be a paparazzi, but not take away from the actual stars of this. Was amazing, and I would have never gotten that. I got to do a practice match in front of Undertaker. Things like that would have never happened in my life, and it was really awesome. And what I basically got told by quite a few guys was, "Wow, you really you got a mind for this. Too bad you're not bigger and better shape." It was always too bad you're not bigger is what I always got told. So,
see, that sucks.
But
then where's that put you? What's that make you do?
It made me be more, it just made me be more interesting. It just made me like, I knew I wasn't going to be able to hang with the super athletes. I tried to be more athletic and more high flying and stuff. And usually it just ended up in injury or just looking bad and stuff. And so for a while, I just kept running. It was kind of like a punk rock version of Drexl. I was teaming with Christina Von Erie and Jesse Neal at the time down in Florida. And Florida scene was very, if you weren't friends with people, you weren't getting booked. And so if it wasn't for Jesse, I wouldn't have gotten booked down there. He helped me out a lot by picking me up as his tag partner because he was teaming with Shannon Moore at the time in Impact, and Shannon isn't about to go do Indies. So Jesse would get me booked as his tag partner and helped open up some doors. And one of those doors was down in South Florida. And I got to meet a Buddha Dean, Snake Master Jeff, who was one of Kevin Sullivan's managers in the Army of Darkness. And granted, this is 25 years past the prime of the Army of Darkness, but the Army of Darkness is still a thing down in Florida. And when Kevin comes down to visit his family and for good weather, Kevin always does shows down there, and Army of Darkness is always involved. So I had an opportunity. They wanted me to turn heel at one of these companies, and I said, yeah, could I? Looking around at the landscape at that point, besides Abyss and maybe like Relic down in Mexico, there was no real monsters. There was like being a monster, almost an over the top monster gimmick, just wasn't a thing anymore. Like everyone wanted to be a real wrestler at this point. This is at least a decade ago, probably a little bit more or so. About 11, 12 years ago, probably. And so I said, hey, can I do a total character switch up, kind of do old school FMW Japanese monster gimmick, is what I tell them. In my head, I'm going to do Dr. Luther. So I hit up Luther and said, hey, I'm going to steal your gimmick. And Luther laughs about it. He goes, go ahead, go for it. He goes, I ain't using it right now. So I came out in a white jumpsuit, like splattered with red fucking blood splatter all over it. Blackened my eyes out and came out just acting different, chucking chairs and kind of doing that old FMW crazy hardcore monster. And that put me in the Army of Darkness. So next I'm working with Kevin Sullivan, and suddenly I'm getting booked on shows where Kevin's booked in a match, but Kevin really can't take bumps anymore. So I'm essentially booked just to slide in and take the bumps for Kevin as he slides out, and I kind of finish the match that he started. And all these other opportunities and stuff. And
bench runner in baseball.
Yeah, it was a lot of just, I don't know, different opportunities that opened up that never would have happened in the Pacific Northwest, because up here we didn't have any former big stars. They'd all gone, and none of the companies were able to afford to bring up the former WWE guys. So I suddenly got to work on shows with all these legends. I suddenly got to work guys like the Headbangers, or working on a bunch of shows
nice.
with Stevie Richards and things like that never would have happened. I met a lot of people, and in that time, that's where I became super close with like Sue Young, Ricardo Rodriguez, just a bunch, Chris Hero, people like that now, like I just had Chris Hero in for DOA and had him doing seminar and meet and greet and stuff. And this is all from, relationships that I met when I was down in Florida. And so after my time in Florida, I figured it was right at the time when they were switching FCW to NXT and they were moving it to Orlando, which pretty much meant everyone that I was friends with, because I used to hang out with, my wife hung out with like Soraya, Paige, and Tennille, and people like that. So all of our friends are moving to Orlando. We're still in Tampa. And I think Sue was the last one that was still in Tampa, and she was like doing tours of Japan. So she was never around. And so me and my wife were like, all right, we're over this Florida thing. We didn't really like the people, minus the wrestlers, who none of them were actually from Florida. And so we decided to move back to the Pacific Northwest. And I thought that would be the end of my career. And I thought I would be coming back to just kind of wrestle with my friends again and just end my career on a happy note. I'd probably be done by the age of 40. And then I came back, and next thing I know, like the Paraguay opportunity came about, and then Defy popped up, and then Prestige popped up. And then all of a sudden the Pacific Northwest started having a scene, and I've just helped grow that and build that to what it is now, where it used to be like a total black hole. Now it's starting to actually become a destination where, running DOA, I get a lot of wrestlers that hit us up that are willing to like fly themselves out just because they want to work a DOA show, because we're doing so well right now. I mean, we're averaging at least 350 at all the shows. And for a company that's been around for 13 years based solely off of locals, and now essentially I've got maybe 1 or 2 fly-ins a show. But even the shows where the fly-ins were people like Keita Murray or Heidi Howitzer, guys that are guys and girls that are on the coming up, not like big stars, ex WWE or anything like that, just people looking for opportunities. And we've been drawing that without having to call in those, big former contract stars and stuff. So it's great. And I thought my career would be done, 7 years ago, but it's just expanded and keeps getting better now. And I feel like it really all started when I first went down to Florida and FCW, because all those steps, I tell people that the more people you meet in wrestling, the more opportunities are going to come about because of that. And that's one of the reasons I keep bringing all these people out here. I just had Serpentico. I've known Serpentico for years from before he was Serpentico, and just brought him out to DOA and had him do a seminar, and a bunch of different people like that. I've got Sue Young coming up. She'll be doing a seminar, and just learning from all these people, meeting all these people gives you more opportunities so that to get your name out there, to expand and keep expanding the Pacific Northwest, because that's what we're doing now. Because of guys like Nick Wayne, who exploded on the indies, because of guys like Sonico getting out there, Jaden's getting out there quite a bit. C4 is getting out there after going to Nightmare Academy, and it's awesome to see this area finally getting the representation that it's deserved. And just watching it grow and get better and better. And I kind of feel like, for me at least, my journey all started when I went down and did FCW, and I got out of my comfort space of the first 5 years of my career down here, where it was me wrestling with my friends, because that's all we had down here. I tell guys now, we would get one sponsor, or we would get maybe one seminar a year. I remember my first year was Dr. Tom Pritchard did a 2-day seminar, and that was amazing.
Nice.
And then I think year 2 was like Lance Storm. And then year 3 was like Nick Densmore, which ended up being a horrible one. But like as we go along, it was really, the opportunities were very few and far between. And so now I look around, and pretty much every month between Oregon or Washington, there's going to be some kind of really good seminar coming up. And even when I don't have a big name coming in for a show to run a seminar, one month I did one for character development, which I was really shocked how many people showed up for, or I haven't even announced it yet. This month before DOA, Makabe is going to do a technical wrestling seminar for a couple hours. And Makabe's chain work is so phenomenal. And he's getting another guy that has been working for DOA for the past few years, who's getting that national exposure more and more on the indies. So, and getting himself out there. So it's just, I feel like we got a bunch of good vets. We got guys like Ethan HD or HBQ and Wade Hess, Big Ugly, Vinny Massaro.
All the guys I used
area.
To see when we first came out there.
They're all giving back to the area. Yeah, it's they're all giving back to the area now, and I look for that, especially with the vets that I book. Cleaver is another one. Like, me and Cleaver split up as a tag team and essentially have now mentored 2 new tag teams, and I'm like, now this is our job. Get these kids over. It's not to get ourselves over. I can go out there and get over on any show. I don't need to, especially with DOA. I try not to book myself on DOA as much as possible. I would rather just manage the kids that I'm mentoring than actually wrestle on them, because I'm trying to give opportunities and grow this area. And I make an appearance, great. I can get people to show up because I'm making an appearance, but I don't have to take that spot wrestling. I'd rather give it to one of these kids and help to get them to that level. So, started talking about FCW, and then I just start rambling again.
Those are good wrestling conversations. That's what we're all about. That's why we made a podcast. We just talk so much wrestling every time we talk.
Essentially, this is what car rides are like. And so Jaden just got the opportunity because I brought in Chris Hero and Rachel Ellering. And I got them booked up at the Without a Cause show the night before. And so then I was going to drive them back from Without a Cause back to Portland. And Jaden was in the car with me. And Jaden originally was going to just stay up in Seattle and ride back with the other guys in the morning. And then I was like, oh, I got Chris and Rachel in the car, and he's like, all right, I'm coming back with you. And just sitting there, and I was like, you're gonna learn more in car rides like that with vets that like to talk than you'll learn from any wrestling school. Dr. Luther, that was a huge thing for me, was when I started at Portland. Luther just took a liking to me and said, hey, you want to take me to the strip joint and drive me to the strip joint? And so that's how I kind of became friends with Luther and started sitting under his learning tree, was those car rides. And then from those car rides to phone calls and things like that. And it wasn't like I ever specifically met up with Luther in a ring to get trained by him, but he spent hours upon hours every week just talking wrestling with me. And that's why my mind works the way it does. And it kind of works different than other people. And I think so much more in depth of it, because I never had that physical athletic side. It was all about the mental side. And I knew that was my in wrestling, and my ability to tell stories and look at it from a different perspective as far as characters and all that stuff. So I don't know. I'm happy. I love our guys we got right now. Like Wade Hess just came back, and in this match, we ended up having Sonico had blown out his knee. He wasn't going to be able to defend his title, and Rebel Kel was supposed to face Sonico. So I had to switch up the main event day of show and end up making it like a 6-way deal. And Wade Hess is in it. Wade Hess has just came back, and I forget. Kel was supposed to beat someone else, and Hess actually walks up to me and he goes, "Hey, so Kel doing pretty good?" I said, "Yeah, she's getting really over with fans, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "How about she beats me for the title?" I looked down. I was like, "What?" He goes, "I mean, will it help give her a little bit more rub if I'm the one she pins for it?" I was like, "Of course. I mean, you're by far the biggest badass in this match." And he goes, "All right, cool. I want to do that." And when you've got vets that do that, or Randy Cunningham, Carl Randers now, he's the head trainer for Buddy Wayne Academy. And pretty much after every DOA show, he asks me, after I watch the show back, he'll ask me what the Buddy Wayne guys need to work on, and he'll make sure that, and then I've been pretty much purposely just booking him with younger guys, and then he gives me their take on these younger guys. Hey, they need to work on this and this, but they're really good at this. And having vets like that and reporting back, or like Ethan, I give Ethan the best of the best on the young guys, but he's just making all the whole next generation, just elevating them to that upper level. So it's awesome. I love the Pacific Northwest right now, and people can talk, about the drama and all that stuff. Every area's got its drama, but I see good things coming out of this area now. So I'm happy for that.
I think it goes in spurts. I think where it'll buckle down, but I think at this point you've got such a good reputation in Northwest. There's everything's so much more open with social media. It's more comfortable, I think, for the younger crowd to pursue a wrestling career than it was.
Oh, that 100%. I mean, Ricky Gibson School is doing amazing here in Portland. And then up in Washington, you got Dragonplex, which is ran by the Bash brothers, Dave Turner and Chris Ross. And then you got the Buddy Wayne Academy. So you got 3 reputable schools that DOA specifically like looks at on a regular basis for any young guys and stuff like that. And then as far as just, it's not the bullshit of before, of as much of the bullying and stuff like that. It's taken a while, but we've gotten rid of most of the douchebags. And that includes even like, you always had those kind of lower promotions that weren't as good and don't draw and stuff. And even those companies are the one are clearing out of all the waste, the toxic waste that's filled the area for so long and stuff. So I'm happy to see it happening across. Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few that I've seen and refused to work for and things like that. But it's nice to see at least people trying to make the area a better spot. And then as far as like the fan base is totally changed. And granted, when you go in certain cities, it's a little bit harder, but at least like Portland, Seattle, things like that, that's not, anyone can come to a wrestling show and not feel alienated now. And if someone's being an asshole, something's going to be said and they're going to be tossed from the show. There's no bigotry, no bullshit. None of that crap goes on anymore. And if it does, the fans make sure that the owners know, and it gets taken care of now. So it's none of the bullshit that used to happen.
Yeah. So I mean, like, what kind of shit? Like people just saying
And
dumb.
fans in general. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
but think about things like what was acceptable to say in the 80s, like Adrian Adonis, what they would chant at Adrian Adonis,
Gotcha.
things like that. You still got that as of 10 years ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but 10 years
wrestling
ago we
fans,
had it.
yeah, wrestling fans still that does not happen now. Things will be set to like most of the companies will have their ring announcers say, hey, no bigotry, no sexual like slur, no, this is about, the competitors, and there's no reason for you to scream at, the wrestlers, like just inappropriate slurs that aren't part of our society anymore. And so we just don't allow it to happen. And I mean, we have a big representation of the LGBTQ plus community at DOA, from everyone from Abigail Warren, who's on every single show, or Kid Bandit, or Keita Murray, or Jay Vidal. Lots of different people come through, and I want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable. And I also want to feel the same way for the fans. I want the fans to feel 100% comfortable. So
There's a lot of
always
fans
strive for
too.
that. Yeah,
There's
exactly.
no reason to be like that too. I mean, there's a lot of guys back in the '90s, I think, that were still in the closet and didn't come out, and I think some of those unfortunate deaths that they brought upon themselves were a part of that, and not being comfortable to come out in the business because of, like some of them say it was a good old boys business and things like that.
And it was, and I mean, and you could get around it. You just took more ribbing, you took more shit, you were the butt of more jokes, is what it ends up being. And I mean, there was gay guys back then. Look at like someone like Chris Colt, who was pretty openly gay and stuff, and everyone, or even Pat Patterson, everyone knew back in the locker room was gay. But in return, yeah, you were gonna get treated a little bit different. You were probably gonna get harassed, and there was going to be areas that you probably weren't going to be able to work and stuff like that. But it was the same on depending on what race you were, or anything like that. So it was like that across the board. So
I was watching a New Jack documentary. That guy, he just embraced it. He's crazy when it came to that kind of bigotry.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to.
It pissed the crowd off more, and it got him over more, got him more heat. It was just, he worked it. He was like, fine, that's what you're going to say to me.
Back in the day,
let's go with it.
A heel was supposed to get an emotional response, and usually that emotional response was hatred. And you used any trick possible, and that included racism, and that included like, take what's already there and you're going to take it, and you're going to take their money for it. The society doesn't really quite work the same way anymore. And if you were to actually go out there and try to play off the racist type things or any of that stuff, I think it would fail miserably. People don't, they don't want to just like boo someone just because of their religion or their sexual preferences and things like that. So it's good steps forward. I mean, long way to go, just in general of our society, but we are making steps forward that people can be, be themselves. I purposely do it a lot, and no one has specifically asked me, but I find myself kissing my opponents a lot, especially after hardcore and death matches. And part of it is the Drexl character gets off on the pain. And why wouldn't I kiss someone that just whooped my fucking ass? And another reason that I originally started doing it, why not make it normal? Why not make it okay? Why not those few fans that are the hardcore, like, yeah, you're Mr. Metal, hardcore, horror, blah, 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 that might be offended by something like that? Fuck them. I'm gonna make it so that they have to deal with it.
They're
so
teeny
that
tiny percent anyway.
Yeah, I know it is, but it's one of those things that I don't give two shits. Kiss guy, girl, whatever. I don't know. I also feel weird now being the old guy that in the 90s, my whole generation was about not having labels, that no one wanted a label. You just wanted to be able to do whatever the fuck you wanted to be able to do. And now everyone needs a label. So that still is weird to me. And I try to be as accepting as possible. But to me, I'm like, fuck a label. I don't really care. Just be you and be a good person and not try to be shitty. Like, I don't know. The older I get, the more I believe in karma, and And I know shitty people are shitty things are eventually going to happen to them most of the time, one way or another. And they could come across as being rich and famous, but I guarantee their life is probably fucking pretty horrible in general on a lot of these fucking idiots. So, and that includes, the wrestlers. What do I do when I see that there's a shitty ass wrestler? I just don't book them anymore, and I let other promoters that I have their ear. I let them know what a shitty ass person they are. Am I gonna go on social media and bash them and all that stuff? No, it's not my place to judge. It's my place to yeah, here's the facts. This is what I've seen this guy do. So I'm gonna clear it up that way and just weed them out because I don't want to give them any publicity. I don't want to go online and talk about how shitty this person is and blah, blah, blah. Because all you're doing is just opening up more opportunities for them to spread their fucking shittiness. Just
That's true.
Sweep them away. And eventually they give up. And I feel like that's kind of happening here in the area. That and it swings both ways with the cancel culture, where I've seen enough people that were canceled for actual lies and stuff, and it goes both ways. And so I've got currently Christina Von Eerie is dealing with this bullshit with Chris Dickinson, her ex, who was a total fucking piece of shit. And I can say that now, and I haven't been able to say that for 7 years now because it wasn't my story to tell. Now Christina's come forward and everyone's like, well, why'd you wait so long? Why'd you do that way? Because he beat the fuck out of her. He threatened her a lot. And and people are questioning her about it. And it's because it has been so many people that have lied and whatnot. But I saw the pictures of her black eye. When she got down to Paraguay, I saw the text messages of him telling her, you need to just come back to the States right now and leave that because you don't deserve it. And if you don't, I'm going to put nude photos of you all over the internet and ruin your career. And that was the bullshit that he used to do. And he's done it to multiple girls. And so now I think he's planning on trying to sue her for defamation of character. And
that's going to be the new thing, I think.
Yeah, well, there's now lawyers involved and shit. And what she had told me that her lawyer said, yeah, go on as many podcasts as possible. So fuck it, I'll talk about it too. Chris Dickinson was a piece of shit as a boyfriend to her, and I had to keep my mouth shut for all these years because it wasn't my story to tell. And I hope he ends up like he came out to the Pacific Northwest once. I told the promoter, I said, I can't tell you who, but Chris is not a good person. I'm not going to ask you to take him off this show, but just know that there will be no interaction between me and him. I won't go near him. And if just no, I gave him kind of a rundown that he's just not a good person. That person, Chris, has never been invited back to that company. He's never been back. And that's part of the reason. And that day, like literally, he knows who the fuck I am. We've never met, but he knows who I am because me and Von Eerie have been so close for so long. And there was no eye contact. There was no walking over like, hey, nice to meet you. No, he knew I'm just going to stay on this other side of the fucking room. And Drexl's going to stay in that other room. And we're just going to, yeah. So I've had to be in weird situations, awkward, horrible situations because of shit like this. But
it's caught up with
hopefully, yeah, I mean,
she's not the only one who
truth
said something.
comes out.
There's been others that said something about him as well. So.
Oh yeah. His next girlfriend, he essentially, who he met her, I think she was like 16 and was a very innocent girl just getting into the scene. I don't think he actually tried anything till she was 18, but from what I heard from other wrestlers, it was very weird and awkward, and she was a very innocent girl, and then essentially kind of did the same thing and had a file on his computer of all of his exes nude just so he could threaten them and shit like that kind of fucking
like
douchebag.
Epstein of wrestling. Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, and there was lots. I love Playboy Buddy Rose for what he did for me as a trainer, but Playboy Buddy Rose as a person, not a good person. I mean, there was a lot of shit Buddy did back in the day that irrehensible. But that's a lot of wrestling was back then, and I'm happy to see that it's not filled with those fucking power hungry douchebags as much. It's less and less. I mean, you're always going to have it because it is the entertainment business, but it is nice to watch it slowly get a little bit better, and there's less of that bullshit going on. So
got another question there, Rusty?
Go for it, dude. You got questions, man. You got the questions written
So
out, man.
one thing,
I'm just here
like
to look pretty on the
wrestling's all
radio.
about the rumors. Did you ever get to work with Bray Windham?
I did commentary for my FCW beginners show match. He did commentary for it, but I met him in passing, but never actually got to spend any time with him. So
that damn Fiend character's gimmick infringement on you, I swear.
I have it is. So I will say this, that after doing commentary, the Bray Wyatt character, he hadn't started that. He was transitioning from Husky Harris to, he had done a few different gimmicks. At one point, he was wearing like a Jason mask out there at the small non-televised FCW shows and stuff, different names and stuff. But during my promo for the FCW thing, I did cut a promo all about being both the wolf and the shepherd, and I could be the one to lead you to enlightenment, or I could be the one to strike you down, blah blah blah. And then I literally heard him use some of those exact same lines as Bray Wyatt in his early FCW days. So, never know. I do happy to say I was the first guy with a blonde dreadlock mohawk out on the wrestling scene. And then that kind of became a thing for a little while too. And I was like, who the hell thinks, all right, well, I'm white, I'm going to get dreadlocks and I'm going to bleach them blonde. And then that suddenly becomes a thing with multiple people. So, but I don't know. Bray is, everyone that I know that knows him, that's friends with him, he's a very out there guy that thinks very in-depthly about his character and about character development stuff. And he's very much an artist, and I will accept anyone and their weird quirks when it comes to being an artist. So let him be as weird and as crazy and inspired by as many things as possible.
Well, last show we were talking about that. I was talking to somebody, I won't put out the name, but who's in the biz, and they talked about it, and I was like, yeah, when would he be coming back? We all thought he'd come back this weekend or Monday Night Raw. And they talked about an ego issue with him and just butting heads when it came to characters. And that's kind of his way out of WWE about a year ago, is that they just weren't getting along. And he wanted something more darker, and they're giving something more cartoonish.
Yep.
And so that's where things kind of
it's I mean, and you have to, he made enough money and he could stand up there because he didn't, when you look at the mismanagement of the Bray Wyatt character and how over it was, and then they killed that. So he comes back with the Fiend character, which is even more over than the Bray Wyatt character was. And then the mismanagement of that character, you kind of have to stand up for yourself. It was the same shit as Moxley was dealing with. When you're dealing with like hokey TV writers writing for characters they don't understand, you're never going to have the right, like the average wrestler is just going to accept what's given to them and try to run with it and stuff. But then there's those guys that, this is an art to them. And very much, if they are a true artist, they're not going to be, they would rather be poor and do other forms of art. And make Jeff Hardy as another guy would rather just go do his own thing than worry about getting a paycheck over, overdoing someone's version of him, essentially.
I'm enjoying everyone doing their own thing. I mean, the indie scene right now, it's a different indie scene because of fight TV, and then
because of streaming in general.
Yes.
IWTV and fight.
Awesome.
I mean, IWTV is the best thing to happen to indie wrestling. The amount, every time I'm on a live streaming IWTV event, I average at least 100 to 200 new followers on social media. It's insane. Nice. And it's just that the ability to get your stuff out there is so easy now. That's a double-edged sword. That means that anything that's going out there, you better be at the top of your game. Because back in the day when that was a stinker, that was a match. And now, that match is now going to be seen by way more people than it used to be. So it's a double-edged sword on that. Exactly. Yeah. But it also gives guys the opportunity to build their characters more. And come up with stories to their characters, because you have this free ability to advertise and get out there on the web with different forms of streaming, and between YouTube and social media and everything, you can do your own storylines. Like, I hear wrestlers shit on social media storylines, but I've also watched social media storylines actually draw business. So it goes both ways. I mean, yeah, I think it's stupid when you have the typical "I'm gonna kick your ass" blah 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 bullshit. But I feel like you can take modern day things and work off of those to come up with your new conflicts and stuff. I tell a lot of speaking on the Bray Wyatt and Bad Creative, dealing with some other promoters and stuff, and you've got a lot of. I feel there's a lot of promoters out there that when they book a wrestling show, it's their toy box and they want to play with their toys the way they want to play with them. And that means that this guy does this when this happens. And my philosophy on booking is a little bit different, where I look at it more like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and I'm the dungeon master. What I'm doing is I'm putting these wrestlers in situations. How they respond to these situations, that's on them, but I'm just putting them in these situations. Now, me as a booker, I should know in my head, I should know enough about their character to know which way they're probably going to head with it, and stuff like that. And we'll discuss it, but I'm never going to tell anyone, this is how you need to respond to this. And like, you need to be blah, 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 blah. No, I want to just drop them in these situations. And then you allow them to get creative with it and see how their character. I tell people all the time with character development, your character is ready to go when you know how they will respond to the average mundane thing that happens in your life. For example, I know what's going to happen if Drexl was to pull up to a fast food restaurant and they mess up his order, and Drexl comes back around to the door. Drexl is going to be, he takes this all personal. It's not that someone screwed up and forgot his fries. This is very personal to him. He's probably going to throw shit. He's going to scream and rage out like a goddamn Karen. And he's going to take it as the most personal thing in the entire world, because Drexl is very self-involved in that way, but also could be distracted by something shiny at the exact same time. So, but I tell people, how would your character respond if someone screwed up your order at a restaurant? And they look at me weird. And I was like, when you know that, then in the ring, whatever happens in the ring, you know how they're going to respond. It becomes your second nature. The same way that muscle memory, the way when you learn how to bump and stuff, it becomes muscle memory on how to protect yourself. It's the same way with character development. It's the same kind of muscle memory, where if you know your character and you're able to drop into that character, you know how they're going to respond to whatever the situation is. And it makes it easier not to break character and things like that, no matter what's going on. And I have fun trying to make people break character. I do it all the time, especially during interviews. So
when do characters take it too far? I want to bring up three things really quick, and it's happened over the years. And one's a character, or one's a gimmick, and the other ones have pushed it. So one will be the recent incident with Joey Janela and the super kick of fire. The other one would be a couple years ago, was her name Gigi Dolan now, the one that used the tampon as the mandible claw.
Priscilla.
And then you have Nick Gage.
Okay.
Do any of these guys, in your eyes, is that taking it too far? I mean, just as what they do and what they've, any of that stuff, or is it?
So my thing on all these are, does it make sense in the fight? Okay. So as we go through these, you've got a Nick Gage with the pizza cutter and stuff like that. Does it make sense in a death match? Yes, 100%. Nick Gage trying to stab people out there makes 100%. And that's why he is one of the most popular death match wrestlers in the world. Because when you see Nick Gage out there, in your head, you're like, this guy might actually really stab someone, or might really get stabbed. There's that line between reality and fiction is so blurred that you don't know. Gigi Dolan and her mandible claw with the tampon. Great spectacle for a GIF. Absolutely repulsive on a spot and a great moment. And I have no problem with it, because she took what was available, and especially as a woman, to embrace something that guys find so fucking gross. I mean, how many guys in the world still won't have sex with a woman if she's on her period?
Yeah.
So that right there, like, this the way I think. So my paper cut spots gets over so much because everyone knows what paper cuts are. So then I took the paper cuts from going between the webbing of the fingers. Then I started doing the mouth. Hey, I'm going to put a smile on their face. Then I took it even farther and started doing the eye. And I start peeling their eyelids open and I'm trying to cut their eyelid. And you know how many people actually watch that? Maybe half the people, because half the people turn away and don't even want to see it.
Yeah, it makes my eyes
because
water thinking about it.
It's a mental mind fuck. When she pulled out that tampon, that fucking bar full of guys, oh my God, the mental mind fuck on them. That just, I thought it was genius personally. People shit all over it. I thought it was fucking genius because she made a moment that was going to fry in those guys' minds because it was such a forbidden, taboo thing. Now, the Joey Janela thing. I understand setting things on fire. I don't understand setting yourself on fire in any sort of way. And that not just Joey. I've seen Japanese guys do it. They'll do the flaming arm and things like that. In reality, if you crash through fire, there's a chance you're going to catch on fire. But if you set your elbow on fire or your foot on fire, that's what's on fire. It's just hitting the person. So the person's not getting they're still just taking a super kick. It might be slightly hotter, but the super kick's not going to burn their face before it burns your fucking foot. So that's what my problem with that is. The same with and those spots never go off the way they're supposed to. Anytime anyone sets themselves on fire, I've seen them do the splash where they set something strapped around their chest on fire. And they're the one, every time they're the ones on fire and it's never their opponent. So that's why I don't really like those spots. And it has nothing, I'm all about making huge moments and things like that. But when you're just hurting yourself and it's not actually hurting your opponent, that's where I'm like, man, it totally takes me out of it. And Joey flopping around trying to extinguish his foot is absolutely ridiculous. And you didn't have to do that. You would have been much better off. Why don't you just light the chair on fire and fucking Sabu that at his head? All right. Now the chair is on fire. All right. It sabooed him into his head. So that might actually burn his face because now you're dealing with hot metal that's hitting the face, not a hot rubber sole of your boot that's just going to be warm. And, ooh, I got some sticky rubber sole on my face. I mean, essentially, that's what you would end up with is maybe you got some of that stuck to your face out of that whole spot. If it happened the way it's supposed to, and you got full power from lighting your own foot on fire and kicking someone with it, that's the best that's going to happen. At least with the chair, oh, maybe I might actually burn the shit out of the guy if I chuck a chair that's on fire at him, or if I throw him through a flaming table or a sheet of glass or something like that. There's a chance that he's going to catch on fire, and that I'm trying to hurt my opponent. That's the whole point of wrestling, is to hurt your opponent. So that's my opinion on those three things.
Yeah, no, I bring them up. They're always a topic that were always heated topics on there.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes into the next one. We all watched. I'm guessing you watched Sunday with Cody.
Yes.
Or a couple days ago.
Yep.
There was a debate on the internet, whatever you want to call it, dirt sheets, whatever the kids out there want to do. That it was unsafe on one respect, and that on another retrospect, that how
unsafe for who?
Respected Seth was for both wrestlers, for Cody being hurt, for doing anything. There was some people spouting off that it was an unsafe work environment in the ring. One of them is actually a dirt sheet writer, all famous one. But that he was unsafe, and then another group saw it as a lot of respect to Seth and taking care of Cody in the ring with that injury and still getting him over and making that match incredible still with an injury like that. Now you've been in the ring with injuries. I'm sure you've been in the ring with guys with other injuries. Ever concern you in a way?
No, because we know what we're doing out there. We can sculpt a match to work around injuries. I can have a blown out knee, throw on a brace, and just make sure that during this match, I'm not going to be picking this person over my my head where my knee might go out or something that's going to possibly hurt them. You know what your limitations are with your injuries, and you can sculpt your match around that and work around that. As far as Cody working through the pain, that was what was impressive to me, because I know how much pain he had to be in that entire match, and the willingness to take that abuse. But at the same time, he'd already tore it completely off. It's already torn from the pack. So it's not going to get any worse. So it was one of those deals. And that's kind of, most wrestlers now would have never done it. Cody has that old school mentality of, is it going to be any worse? No. And I'm a firm believer, just like when people were freaking out about Ric Flair going and wrestling this last match, that second specialist I went and saw about my neck told me, he goes, I said, well, after I get through the physical therapy, should we do more MRIs and x-rays? He goes, he laughed. He goes, no, nothing's changed in there. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you just know how to deal with it to get that space back, and so that it doesn't get worse. And just, he goes, if it comes back permanently, like if it gets worse, then we might have issues and stuff like that. But he goes, you know what you're dealing with now and how to deal with it. He goes, and I think he's like, I'm 75 right now. I love to ride my bike. My family hates it. They say it's so goddamn dangerous, me riding on the side of the road all the time. And he goes, but the things we like, sometimes they are dangerous. If you want to wrestle, go wrestle. Just know that you really shouldn't be taking spots on the top of your head and landing on the top of your head. So whatever that means, like if you're able to work around that and you feel like you can do that without, deliberately trying to hurt your neck, go for it. And I feel the same way for, Ric Flair wants to wrestle one match, let him wrestle one more match. For Christ's sake, if the man wants to die in the ring, let him die in the ring. It's his choice. I'm so sick of everyone wants to make everyone's choices for them. And
let's not do it on that day. That's my birthday, damn it.
I mean, like, it's ridiculous that we're back to we're back into the cycle of now everyone wants to make everyone's choices from abortions on up, and it's back to that where everyone knows better than yourself. And I wish people would just back the fuck off, start worrying about themselves, and stop judging everyone else and everyone else's choices. And if they're not hurting anyone else, that then it shouldn't fucking concern you. So let Ric Flair have a match at 70-something years old.
Yeah, people who point the finger the most usually have the most skeletons in their closet anyway.
Yeah, usually. I mean, I'm so over that. And we just live in a society. And once again, I mean, I'm kind of excited to, if I last that long, to see what the backswing is going to be. Because last time the backswing was South Park. And South Park somehow has lasted this entire time after our last round of, this is what's good for you and not good for you in the 80s going into the 90s. And then South Park came out of that. South Park now has literally turned themselves where they make fun of themselves for things that they did that were inappropriate, that are inappropriate now that were okay 15 years ago, which is awesome. The fact that they just turn it right around on themselves and can lampoon themselves in the exact same way, and found new ways to lampoon the complete ridiculousness of our world. I'm curious to see what we end up with now when the backswing happens, because it will happen. I don't know if it's going to be 5 years, it'll be 10 years, but it could be just 2 years. You never know. But it swings back and forth, and we'll see what happens next. And hopefully we end up with another George Carlin or something, because I was just watching that George Carlin special on HBO, and there needs to be more George Carlins in the world on just speaking the truth without their own agenda involved, and just their own observations about how fucked up we all are.
Yeah, you need more things you've never seen before, like a man running at full speed taking a shit.
I mean, you need I mean, with Carlin though, I mean, he took a long time before he became like
took like
what he was. I mean, he was fucking
3 decades essentially. He had 3 different versions of himself before he even got to that point. So
yeah. And so I mean, I don't know if people can just, like, if a new comedian could come in and just go right into being the Carlin, or if it has to be someone who's already pretty established, who's done more and more and just kept on kind of building on that. And then who that would be.
You would think that would be a Dave Chappelle, but even a Dave Chappelle at times goes too far that people haven't. He's been too far at points where people don't understand him either. and had his own personal agenda in it a little too much. That's the thing about Carlin was, I just felt like he didn't. There was no agenda on his thing. He was very much, and they talk about, he felt that he was at his best when it was just him commenting on things and it had nothing to do with his opinions on it. And everyone now is all about their opinions. So we'll see if if there will be someone that comes about that the observational humor that has nothing to do with their opinions. It's just the observation of what's going on and comparing things to different things and stuff like that in what ends up being humorous ways. So,
which could be wrestling too. I mean, it could be
honestly,
that person showing up in wrestling doing that, just being able to like hold the fucking mirror up to society.
It's wrestling. You just never know what's going to come next, because as weird and crazy, it's still a form of entertainment. And it's still the redheaded stepchild of Hollywood and things like that. But when guys like Freddie Prinze Jr. say they want to do a wrestling show where everyone's going to be in the Screen Actors Guild and stuff, it gives hope for elevating it to that next level and being able to be taken a little bit more seriously as an art form. Because one of my favorite moments ever in wrestling, as I'm wrestling Akira, we've now killed each other, we're getting to the striking off point back and forth, and the Roseland started chanting, "This is art." We're both covered in glass and blood, and we're throwing blows back and forth, and they're chanting, "This is art." And I literally, in my head, I probably could have teared up if I could have fully embraced what was going on. But I just like trying not to just smile at that point, because that felt so good to give such a violent, brutal performance, and then have the whole crowd chanting, "This is art," was pretty damn awesome, because I've never had that happen, especially during a hardcore thing like that. I get "You sick fuck," "This is awesome," "Holy shit," but never "This is art." And that felt really good, because I've been pushing this whole moniker of the homicidal artist, because I kind of am. Like, people come up to my merch table and they're like, "Oh my God, you got so much fun merchandise and stuff." I'm like, homicidal artist. I'm like, this is my job. I make art in different forms, and like either, wrestling or graphic design or whatever. I make art, and that's what I strive, is just to create things that weren't out there before. So,
yeah. So what's next on your adventures in pro wrestling? What is you got any more goals, or is it just growing it?
I mean, just keep growing this area, the Pacific Northwest. I mean, trying to make this a major hotbed is a definite goal that I have. Goals personally, like I said, if I can make it to 50 and 20 years in the actual ring, that would be a huge milestone. And I don't know how much longer I have of being able to go every single weekend. Like, I'm actually looking forward this weekend. I don't have any shows this weekend, but the previous 3 weekends I've had 7 shows. So I'm staying really, really busy for my age. My next big match is not this coming weekend, the weekend after that. It's me versus Richard Holiday from MLW. It's going to be for Prestige down in Pomona, California. And that one's just a fun, weird matchup, because that man is all about his priming and proper, like, drinking coffee, and he's totally the opposite of Drexl. So the story I'll get to tell in that, like, essentially when I was told about the match, I said, "You do realize we're probably not going to bump?" And the promoter started laughing, and I was like, "No, seriously, I'm probably going to play with his nipples and just creep him out for an entire match. And we're just going to base an entire match about how I'm out creeping this guy who's in such better condition that looks like a Greek god, but I'm just going to creep him out for an entire match." And he's like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, just, I know you're going to tell a story." And he goes, the last like 3 shows we've put out there have just been like these horrific bloodbaths and like these violent encounters. And he goes, "So I want something different." Because I did the match with Akira. I had a match with Funny Bone recently for Prestige. That was at one point during the trade-off, we started with, I think it was forearms, and then we both picked up staple guns and we just started stapling each other in the chest back and forth. Then we started headbutting. And then at a certain point in the headbutts, we stop, We look down at all the thumbtacks covering the ring, look at each other, look at the thumbtacks, look at each other. Then we both get on our hands and knees, headbutt the thumbtacks so that we both have thumbtacks in our head and start continuing to headbutt each other back and forth at that point.
Oh, God.
We both pulled out lemon juice in that match and both squirted lemon
Yes.
juice on each other. Yeah, just trying to take the violence to another level. I think the match before that for Prestige was me and Vinny Massaro, where I skewered a slice of pizza to his head. So like,
awesome.
I just, no matter what I do, I'm just trying to come up with something different that people haven't seen. And when I see someone like Richard Holiday that on paper it looks like the most weirdest, craziest match, I just think opportunity for fun stories. So I'm really excited for that one. That's coming up. And DOA's got another big show coming up. And my guys that I'm managing, the Dregs, I took Austin Oso, the former Cubby of the Pacific Northwest. I took Bear Boy, and I took him and Charlie Avell, who was one of Luther's students. And I've put them together as my new friends. I would call Drexl's friends, as much as Drexl can have friends. I mean, he's not a very good mentor. His whole strategy is if you hurt yourself enough, the people will like you. And it seems to be working for them. So they're going against the Bash Brothers, who just won the DOA tag team title. So curious to see what happens with that. We just finished up. We just beat the Academy in Cleaver. Cleaver's been now helping out the Academy, Nick Radford and Tom Allman. And they're definitely coming along. Radford and Allman before COVID was very much just kind of a comical, fun, like haha tag team. And now with Cleaver helping, and they tried to set me on fire. They literally set a sheet of glass on fire that Vincent from ROH put me through. So I think I've helped add a little bit of Cleaver being with them has helped add a little bit of a harder edge to them. So it's nice seeing all these tag teams and different people grow. We got POW coming up. I just finished some POW shows. Matches haven't been announced for that. Who else? Oh, Relentless. I've been having a blast up at the Relentless shows in Spokane. Huge crowds. Those are somehow have become Drexl's people. Like those people absolutely love Drexl, and I don't even know what I'm doing on this next set, but the last time Scotty Too Hottie met me and took a selfie with me, and like I get these opportunities. I do graphic work for Charlie Haas, and like Charlie Haas has hit me up about stuff involving wrestling, and I'm just like, what is my life?
Yeah,
I say this quite often, is what is my life? And it just keeps going. Yeah. I'm helping him do some graphics. I did some merch for him, and I'm helping him with a company that he's running and doing graphics for that. And then I've been seeing him on shows, and Scotty Too Hottie being on shows has been absolutely amazing and really fun and stuff to have him in the locker room.
I got the enchiladas, which is my next thing I was going to ask you. You remember doing Ultimate Deathmatch 3?
Yes, I do.
Oh, man.
I was very sad that Ricky Morton didn't get to do this Prestige show that just came up, because I wanted to ask him about doing that battle royal with him, and him walking up with a cigarette in one hand and a coffee in the other and going, "Hey guys, I'm old, so please don't throw any potatoes out there. Just, this is a movie. Just please take care of me." And all of us just going, "Yes, sir. We're not going to throw potatoes." Like that's the last thing any of us are going to do is actually hit Ricky Morton, for fuck's sake. But yeah, I just wanted to see I wanted to talk to him and just see if he remembered that. But yes, I remember doing that silly ass movie.
Yeah, no, we were on it. We got to sit there for me at least, and I'm sure Rusty here. We were just in awe because we got to see a bunch of stars and sit there and get some free food, because most of those people that were there were just extras who wanted to be in a movie.
Yeah.
Me, Rusty, my brother, and there was a redheaded kid in a plaid t-shirt there.
Mm-hmm.
We were like the only real big wrestling
fans
there. And we're sitting there, we're like, oh, we see you guys there. And we're like, oh shit. And then we see Tommy Dreamer and Stevie Richards. And one cool thing I always bring up about Stevie Richards on that movie is some asshole walks over as we're talking to Stevie Richards and goes, "HBK, it's so nice to meet you, man. You're so fucking cool. You got Shawn Michaels, you're the best." And Stevie Richards looks over and just goes, "No problem, man." We look at Stevie Richards like, "What the fuck?" as he walks off, like, "You're Stevie Richards. What the fuck?" He's like, "Oh, it's cool, man. It's cool." He was such a cool guy about it, man.
So here I have the best Stevie Richards. Stevie Richards at one point when I was in Florida became my favorite wrestler because of this angle that he did. Stevie's mind is phenomenal for this business. Like the fact that he's in better shape now than he was in his like height is great because he's a massive instructor for DDP and stuff. But I worked a bunch of shows down in Florida and he told me about the storyline. I think it was in Virginia or something. Essentially, Stevie had just came back from a broken neck from an injury and he just started to do independence again. He's going to do this company. And so this wrestler that worked for this company, who is pretty much one of their originals and stuff like that, had recently passed away. And it was some weird, like horrible circumstances of how he died and stuff like that. So during the show, they set this up and they actually kept it completely kayfabe, which makes it all that much better. But during the show, they're going to give away or give out the management's going to give out a biggest inspiration award. So they start talking about the biggest inspiration award, blah, blah, blah. And they've got this guy's mom is in the ring with them. And all of a sudden here comes Stevie and he comes out to the ring and he just takes the award. I want to thank you so much, you know, coming back from a broken neck, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no, Stevie, the award's not for you. It's actually for this wrestler, blah, blah, blah. This is his mother. This happened. He was shot and killed and blah, blah. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for interrupting. Stevie backs down a little bit. They start talking some more. And the woman goes to talk and Stevie's like, I mean, that's a really tragic story, but is it really an inspiration? And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She goes to talk some more. Then he goes, I mean, I'm here. I'm wrestling again. I had a broken neck and I'm still wrestling. Like he doesn't get to wrestle again. So like, shouldn't I be the more inspirational? And like at this point, people are now getting very upset, including this guy's family, who none of the family has been queued in, but they are like the entire front row for an entire like front row. So at this point, the front row is like starting to get up, like getting more and more fucking angry. And Stevie is just kind of being a dick. Finally, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He steps away. She takes it. She finally takes the award. And when she takes it, he just grabs it, pushes her. She falls down and he pulls the award away. That fucking crowd went absolutely apeshit. Front row's trying to come in. Security's trying to stop the family from getting in the ring because this mother, who's probably in her 50s, 60s, is now just fallen in the ring. And the guy's best friend comes out, chases off Stevie. Haven't told anyone in the locker room. The only people that know about this whole angle are Stevie, the promoters, the mother, and the best friend. They have kayfabed everyone in the locker room. They have kayfabed all the family. They've kayfabed everyone. So Stevie doesn't even go back in the locker room, just leaves straight out the door with the award. I'm gone. Everyone's like, fuck that asshole. Fuck this guy. Never want him. No, you know what? We do want him. We're going to bring him back and the best friend's going to kick his fucking ass. And Stevie, the guy's best friend's like, I'm going to fucking kill this motherfucker. So they announce it. Stevie's supposed to face him. Show starts. There's no Stevie. Show's going on. Still no Stevie. Hour into the show, no Stevie. Hour and a half of the show. All of a sudden, here comes Stevie Richards walking into the locker room, covered in dirt with a shovel. Walks right through the locker room, straight out the curtain to the ring, which conveniently a match has just ended. Gets a microphone and proceeds. The guy comes out like, fuck you, you weren't here, blah, blah, blah. Family wants to kill Stevie as he's in there with his shovel. And Stevie essentially says, well, you know how you buried your friend right down the street. You're just going to come in here and lay down, or I'm not going to tell you where I put him. And at that point, the boys in the back realize that it is now a work. The family doesn't. The family is still so upset. And like this all goes, and they end up having a match and shit like that. But when Stevie told me that story and how elaborate, I was like, I've never wanted a friend to die so much in my life. Or I've told several friends, I've told Quiz and a few other people that I want you to do this storyline with someone. If I die, this has to happen with someone because this is just too good of a storyline and I want that to happen. But yeah, Stevie Richards was one of my favorite wrestlers because of that storyline at one point. I just thought it was so fucking genius and so amazing and the heat that he got off of it. So,
Oh, I bet. Oh man.
But always
Yeah,
a
no,
really cool guy to me.
No, I bring up that time. It was a good time in my life was going to that movie, seeing all those guys and everything like that, and having that experience and seeing that happen with Steven, how cool he was. Just letting that guy just think that for that moment and just not saying, hey, that's not who I am, and making it a
Making it a
more
thing.
uncomfortable.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Just let the guy think that he met HBQ and or HBK and move on, and and just all right, whatever. And I mean, I'm sure he's gotten it so much back in the day on the road coming off of airplanes, because how many of those guys that sit there waiting for autographs don't actually know who the people that they're begging autographs? That's their job, is to get autographs. And so they just walk up thinking, and then like, that's how they end up offending these guys so often, is we've got one around here now that shows up to all the shows at Pacific Northwest and will be there like 5 hours early, just waiting for any stars that are flying, and come walking up with a bunch of 8x10s that they've personally printed off to have autographed and all that shit. And I mean, it does get annoying. And the fact that Stevie can be that nice, most guys would have just completely kayfabed him and just kept walking and not even paid attention to him. That's usually as nice as you get. So.
Well, I got one more for you. I don't know.
All right.
I didn't hear anything. If you were around at the time, well, you got any stories with Piper?
I've worked with Piper. I worked a few shows for Portland Wrestling with him, and I got to work one of the Portland Wrestling Uncut tapings with him. And I opened one of his one-man shows. I was his opening MC for it. So I worked with Piper a little bit. My main thing that I can talk about Piper is he had the most amazing ability, and by far the most captivating person I've ever met, and could literally sell anything to anyone. When Piper talked to you, he made you feel like the most important person in the entire world, and nothing could put a stop to that, which is good and bad. When Piper is the person trying to book a wrestling show and you're not really happy with what you've got your character doing, but Piper brings you in your room, and by the time you walk out, you're like, yeah, I'm doing that. And then like a half an hour later, you realize like he totally just sold me on something I totally didn't want to fucking do. God damn it. But yeah, Piper had the most amazing ability to make you feel like the most important person in the world, even if he could give two shits about you and was going to forget about you five minutes later. In that moment, he would make that general connection with you. So that's the biggest thing on Piper that I could put over that. And he's the one that told me about the always write things down, because you never know. As a talker, he's like, you never know when you're gonna have to cut a promo. You never know when you're gonna need something to talk about. He goes, so just make notes. And he always had his notebooks. And I used to have notebooks, and now I got my notebook on my phone, and it's just filled with quotes, stories, whatever. So anytime I'm looking for some inspiration, I can go through there, and I saw it on the show and blah, blah, blah. And it was this one quote, but that one quote could turn into an entire promo. So,
yeah.
I mean, so this weekend, for example, I had written down, I don't know what, I think I was watching that John Wayne Gacy documentary thing on Peacock. I think it's on Peacock.
Okay.
And so I wrote something down that was just kind of inappropriate at one point that essentially said, that's about as fun as a barrel of dead babies. And that's not very fun unless you're John Wayne Gacy. So on Saturday, there was a little girl that looked like Cindy Lou Who at the POW show, who had a sign about me and Funny Bone and how we are the most violent tag team in the world, and like all the stuff written out about us. And she's just this cute little girl, and she's cheering for me and Funny Bone, who constantly swear and do horrific things. And so Funny Bone picks her up, puts her on his shoulder, and we walk around, and she's holding up her sign and stuff. And at one point, as he's parading around, I'm like, most violent is for the children. So to turn it around, as we go into to do a promo later on in the night, we had faced Dr. Cleaver and his one of his new mentees, Derek Shaw, and I kicked off the promo. And I'm like, Derek Shaw, you found out what I've known for the last 7 years. And that's being friends with Dr. Cleaver is about as fun as a barrel of dead babies. And you know what? That's not very fun unless you're John Wayne Gacy. I mean, because it's just kind of sick, you know? And at this point, Brian Zane, who's interviewing us, is just like, what the? because this all goes on Brian Zane's YouTube channel, and I'm now talking about John Wayne Gacy and a barrel of dead babies. So then Funny Bone just starts going, most violent, most fucking violent, most fucking violent, most fucking violent. It's just screaming it, and then just stops, and I'm like, because most violent is for the children. And then we did something to Zane to make him pee himself, and we walked off. And yes, it's things like that that you never know where inspiration is going to come from, that I would somehow associate a random thing that I said while watching a John Wayne Gacy docuseries that I would put in my notebook that would end up turning into like a little kid liking me and Funny Bone. So now most violence for the children. And now let's use that quote in a promo. So it's inspiration from anywhere. And my dog just came and saw me because I was screaming most violent and most fucking violent. So now Sim's like, Dad, what's wrong? Like, yeah, he's like, hey, it's 11:30. You should probably get off and stop talking to people on the internet and take me for a walk. Yeah, he's like, hey, Dad, we need to go get food. Well, we haven't eaten yet either. He's normally we go grab breakfast from someplace in the morning or something. So he's probably like, come on, Dad, it's time to go get food and get our park walk before you get back on your computer and have to do graphics all day. So
yeah. Oh, by the way, we got to meet up at some time, my friend, because we talked a while back and I got these for you.
Those are so awesome. Those are so awesome. Yes, please.
So yeah, next time, just send me a message of the show you're doing next, and I'll try and make my way that way and drop them off to you. So,
okay, well, where are you living exactly at?
Where I'm in good old Tigard.
You're in Tigard. Okay. Probably closest would probably DOA is coming up on the 26th. That's down at the Eagles down in North Portland. That's where BCW used to run. Yeah, we're down there. But yeah, come on down. And I'll throw you on the guest list and stuff if you want to come down and watch the show. Bring family.
Yeah, man, I gotta make it out. It's been a while. My family's grown, and remember the little girl that you used to bring out to see if yeah, she's now got a kid of her own.
Wow. Yeah, that's mind blowing. I mean, because essentially Dom Hess, I've known Dom Hess since he was like 5 or 6, and Dom Hess has a small child that runs around the shows now, and things like, and Jaden has a child that runs around the shows, and Sonico was like 10 years old when he was screaming to go tell me to go fuck myself up in Tulalip, Washington. He was a 10-year-old kid dressed as Alberto Del Rio telling me I fucking sucked. And I remember wanting to punch him in the face. And now he's one of my favorite wrestlers to work with. And it's, time is so crazy like that. Like when I start thinking about that, and then like I can say 17 years in this business, but then when I start spreading that out and seeing the evolution of other people, like I don't see the difference with me, but with other people, and especially with kids and they're adults, and it's just crazy. I don't know, it's mind-blowing to me. It's weird.
But it's cool to watch, man. It's cool to watch everyone grow. I mean, from the wrestling business to the kids around who get into the wrestling business and stuff. It's awesome to see. It's like you say, it's an art. It's a special art, and it's a special passion that there's a percentage of people that don't get out there, and the people that do get it, and it's very meaningful to us. And
watching Big Ugly's kids kill it on the indies now. Watching Buddy Wayne's son and Moondog Moretti's grandson, Nick Wayne, absolutely, like he's signed at 16. He's signed to a major deal, and all he has to do is graduate high school, and the contract goes in effect for AEW. Things like, it's mind blowing. Like he just released a shirt with him, and it's got Moondog and Buddy Wayne on it. And I made the comment, I was like, it's kind of crazy that I work shows with all 3 of you. And he's like, oh shit, yeah, you're right. I was like, yeah, I've been around that long that I was working with your grandpa when I first started. Your grandpa was still on shows. So
he wasn't even alive.
Yeah, no, he wasn't even alive
when you started.
I know he wasn't.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Is like these guys, I'll say something like, yeah, I'm 47. And then it'll be like, what? You're 47? You don't look 47. I'm like, I never had kids. I'm like, okay, but yeah, I'm an old man. Like on average, most of my opponents are at least half my age. Like it's kind of crazy. So as I tell them, yeah, you do all the running, I'll just stand in the center of the ring. Guys like Richie Magnet. I'm glad I questioned, there was a company, NRW, ran by Skag Rollins. Now, famous comedian, TikTok superstar Todd Royce. and he ran NRW, and
crazy.
he would book Richie Magnet, who worked for the old Portland Wrestling and USA Pro, and was kind of a journeyman just in the Pacific Northwest and Hawaii and stuff. And Richie had these little tiny skinny chicken legs, big old stomach sticking out, gray hair, bald back to about there, always had his bandana on. And I would watch him go out there with these young kids that are like luchadors, and they would come back and these kids would just be blown sky high. And Richie wouldn't like the the bandana hasn't moved, and Richie has barely even broke a sweat. He's not breathing hard or anything. And I was so mesmerized by that. And I asked him one day, and he goes, I want you to watch my feet in this match. Next time you watch me, watch my feet. And then I realized that Richie never took a step out of about a 4 to 5 foot box in the center of the ring. Richie never moved from that spot. He would just make them do all the movement around him so that he didn't get blown up doing that. And, because of things like that I now take and use that to my advantage when I'm working with these kids that are like, oh my God, I want to do this. And I'm like, well, my knees can't do that much running. If I'm going to be that much running, I'm going to be puking by the end of the heat. And like, I will be so dead. So what if I do this? You can come off that way. You can run this way. Yeah, I'll run that, duck that, but then I'll just switch and you run that. And then I've learned those little tricks of let's just stay in the center of the ring and I'll let you kids do all the running for me. And that way we can get our movement going in the ring, but no one knows it's not my fault. So.
Getting that longevity in.
Yeah, I mean that's Playboy Buddy Rose used to always say the old quote of less is more, and you're doing too much, and you never understood it when you're young because it's about the movements. It's about doing cool shit, and you want to make cool moments. But when you're young in the business, the cool moments are the cool moves and those things that you do. And as you get older and you learn that you can get bigger pops out of the stuff in between, or the stuff in between sets up for that pop of the move. And you learn that the less is more. Chris Hero says it best. Chris Hero has taken less is more, and he's now retooled it. So we're going to make the most out of the least. That way young guys don't get offended and don't immediately go into the mindset of less is more. Oh, this old guy just doesn't want me to do my stuff. No, this old guy wants you to be able to get the biggest response and the most impact out of that cool shit that you can do that I can't do. So I want to know what moves you want to do in this match. And I'm going to let you get all your moves in. I just want to be able to place them in a spot and set them up so that by the time you do hit them, that crowd literally explodes and it becomes a moment and not just a move. And that's what it comes down to. But you don't understand that for a long time. Very few guys understand that for a long time, especially on the indies, unless you get to work those upper echelon guys. And it's one of those things that can be told to you over and over again, but until you see it in the ring and how it's done and things like that, you just don't understand. So friends in the WWE would tell me John Cena's timing and getting the most out of absolutely anything in the WWE was impeccable because he learned from all the guys before him. So as Cena is making all these other guys, it would be like they'd start doing their fight back, or they'd like, all right, start fighting back. And Cena's like, no, pull me right back down. They're not ready yet. And Cena could read that crowd. He knew his timing. He knew how to get absolutely the most out of the tiniest little things. And that's the stuff that sometimes gets lost in wrestling. And, just you try to pass it on to this next generation. That's what I'm trying to do. And, they won't understand it, but I'm just the same way that it was told to me over and over again. And I didn't get it when I was younger. Now I just keep telling it to these younger guys like Jaden and Sonico and Kid Bandit and all the guy and Oso and Charlie and let them, they get to hear me say it over and over again so that one day all of a sudden it just clicks for them and they get it too. So.
Oh yeah. Well, hey, Derek, thanks for fucking being on here, man.
Oh, no problem. I love to
giving
talk.
us some talking.
This was fucking awesome. Really honored to have you on, man.
Like, thank you guys. I had fun.
Cool.
Me too.
Couple things I want to shoot out there for everybody. Don West is fighting lymphoma, so if go to his GoFundMe page. They were trying to raise $40,000. It has taken a terrible turn at this time. They're trying to get to $80,000. So check out GoFundMe. Also, check out NAMI. I want to put that on the show. That is a mental health organization out there. So anyone who wants to talk to somebody who just don't want to talk to anybody around you, reach out to NAMI. They got some good programs out there to help with mental health. Go to NAMI.com. I believe it is. Check it out. Otherwise, we'll be back next Tuesday, as always, I think. Right, Rusty? What are we doing?
That sounds good. Well, we'll get something going.
See you next
Yeah, well,
Tuesday.
Yeah,
That's
right.
right. That's right. That's right. No,
See
it
you
was an
in the
honor,
morning.
man.
I just got canceled. An hour and a half of talking, hour and 45 minutes, and then I get canceled at the very end for saying something inappropriate. Leave it to me.
It's all appropriate on this show.
I was hanging out with Adam Brooks all weekend. He's from Australia, so sick cunt comes out of his mouth constantly. So you can't blame me for that.
It's a
he's
universal word there.
Yeah,
It's
well, it is like you hang out with him or anyone from England. Like anytime I'm around the Knight family, like cunt is just a fucking it flows so like elegantly. Like they say it as an art. It's an art form the way to say it. It's amazing.
I was 10 years old when I moved to the States from England. So like the word cunt and everything was normal language. And I get hearing you say cunt.
Oh my God.
A lady looked like she was about to grab the Bible and rub it all over her after I said it. I was like, whoa.
100%. Yeah. That's like, oh my God, you need to beat your child. Like, yeah. Smell like completely just drown them in holy water because they
it's just a describing word. It's just a describing word. That's all it is. No.
Once again, talking about George Carlin. Why is this word okay here, but it's not okay here? You can say, yeah, I can play with Bob's ball, but if I'm playing with Bob's balls, it can be taken in wrong way. So it depends on which balls I'm playing with. It's the same word, but why is it offensive? It's just all the same shit.
It is all in the context. Well,
all right. Thank you guys.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm G, yeah, that's me.
I'm Rusty.
And thank you, Derek. We'll see y'all next time, folks. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.